Hello, everyone. Welcome to Love That Lasts, the relationship podcast. And as we kick off our first episode, who better to have as our first guest than Bob Goff? Bob is someone who writes, speaks, and leads by example a life of love. I have personally been blessed by Bob's work and this example he provides as someone who loves others intentionally. So, welcome, Bob. How are you today?
Hey, thanks a million. Great to be on the podcast. I love the name Love That Lasts. It just makes me think about how I used to want to do things that worked, but now I want to do things that last. And you can have
Absolutely.
like the kind of love that's like maybe like the camp love, like on the second day of camp, you're like somebody makes your heart flutter, but then camp's done, everybody forgets about everybody. But how could you have like love that lasts? Why'd you pick that name for the podcast?
Well, it's a relationship podcast, and we really want to encourage people, especially in this space about kind of dating, making decisions about dating and getting married and having a marriage that really goes for a lifetime. How do we cultivate love that lasts? And in a culture that often puts a lot of emphasis just on kind of feeling, we want to talk about action and the things that help love endure. So I thought you're the great person to talk to today. So I'm so excited we could have this conversation together. Before we jump in, though, I want to make a quick plug. I saw that your journey with Jesus came out this week. So, can you say a little bit about that? I love hearing what you're doing.
Oh yeah, I write books every once in a while, and you can pick them up for a nickel at a used bookstore after a while. But the whole idea to release, I'm just such a keen person on get your head on a swivel, see what's going on around you, respond to that. How do you engage? What's the next move? What am I learning? I think we got that curious about the people that we loved, the people we were married to or wanted to be married to, and then just fan those flames. Like that would be a great combination to like have something really lasting that you've created. So all that to say that I'm always writing down what I'm thinking, and then I every once in a while I put a cover on it.
I love it, Bob. Well, your works are beautiful. Let's go ahead and just kind of lean into this space a little bit more about love that lasts as we talk about that together today. You do write and speak a lot about love. Can you share why love is a major focus in your life?
I think it's one of those things, if you've ever gone to the wedding and then they read from Corinthians and they say, faith, hope, and love, and the greatest is love. It just sounds like one of those like that. There ought to be some anthem going off and unicorns galloping through the streets. But then the practical part of loving people is like it's really hard. Because we're deeply flawed. And I've been married to Sweet Maria for 39 years, 5 months, and 25 days. I'm counting up and she's counting down, I think. But we haven't got this dance figured out yet because we're incredibly different people. And then if faith guides your steps, as it does mine, then you'd say that this idea of two becoming one, but oneness doesn't mean sameness. One means oneness. So like that idea, how could I got a bunch of horses out at this retreat center. If you put 10 of them in a field, some's a trail pony, another's a thoroughbred, another's a Tennessee trotter. But if you put them in a field together, get this, after about 30 minutes, their hearts start beating together. I'm like, oh, that'll preach. And so that idea that our hearts could be together at the same time, well, we do life differently. I'm like Tigger and Sweet Maria is the wise owl. So how do you guys navigate that? Because you're not, the same people. You're pulling off a marriage.
Absolutely. I mean, I think part of it is respecting our individuality, but and honoring and advocating for one another, but then making sure we really are cultivating that strong, couple bond within our relationship. And I'm grateful for that. I mean, we find we do that in lots of different areas professionally and, personally. One of the things that I think about, especially around things that you have talked and written about with love, is moving love more into an action place. And it reminds me that love is not just something that we feel, but it's something we practice. And I'm curious, kind of going off of your title, Love Does, which is a book, but also your nonprofit organization, how can we take this idea of love does and apply it like to a marriage?
Yeah, yeah. I'm laughing because it's garbage day here in San Diego. And so the recycle truck goes up and down the street and it takes all the green recycle cans. Do they have the same thing where you are?
Yes, pretty much, except we
Yeah.
don't do great about recycling, Bob.
Okay.
That's
Well,
truth.
yeah, this is California. I mean, like we make up stuff to recycle. So, but there's one neighbor who puts out his recycle can every year. I know he doesn't recycle, but he wants to look like he recycles. He wants to look like he's fitting in. So he puts his empty can out there. And I would just say either fill it up or leave it behind the house. Like, don't put out there what is not full. And so sometimes we can feel this tension to like, pretend that we have a relationship that it's a place that it isn't. Like that idea to like want to fit in. And so you put it out there and you're one or two pieces of plastic away from actually contributing to this. So to say, okay, so let's say you want your marriage to look like the other ones on the block or that it's going somewhere, but you're feeling really empty and isolated. Say, like, what's one bottle? We don't need to fill this thing up to the brim, but what's one thing I can put in there to make that true today? And it might be one small act of selfless love, because every act of selfless love is a declaration of faith. And so you can find one person to reach out to. If it's in your marriage, one thing that lights them up. I'll give you an example. I wear a mood ring. I got it for like, I don't know, $6 on Etsy 20 years ago. And so it changes color. And so Marie and I talk about not where I am, but how I am. That would be a practical way for us to say, let's go a little deeper instead of like following, like me and my travel agent. What if we talk about like how we are? Well, if you were to wear a mood ring right now, what would it say? I don't know what the decoding of that is, which would be another like a metaphor for this, but what would it say about where you're at right now in your head and your heart?
Yeah, I think in a place of creativity, of energy, certainly, as a mom, a wife, a therapist, professor, some fatigue, but I think there's just a lot of like joy I have in living out, these different roles in my life. I love that idea, especially kind of how you really zone into this notion of not just kind of a superficial question, but dig a little bit deeper. Kind of reminds me something my husband Jason and I started years ago. We don't get to do it every day, but we try to make it pretty common. Is instead of kind of asking, "Hey, how'd your day go?" Fine, not so good. We kind of ask, "Hey, tell me about something today that went well." Or maybe something today that was a little harder. And it's a way to connect in spaces when we didn't get to be together in those spaces, but we share that and get a little bit more specific. So I like kind of what you said there about kind of the mood ring thought.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time at San Quentin, and it's not because I knocked off a liquor store, but I've been, and I did have a pretty rowdy youth, but the guys in there, we teach a class, and so I'm always learning new stuff. Like I've learned how to pick a lock. Like I learned all
Maybe
kinds of stuff.
useful.
I don't think they learned anything from me. And last night, I got home, but before I did, I was there was with a guy that had all these tattoos and all that, and I said, like, how did you get all this ink, like while you're in San Quentin? And what he said is, well, I did it myself. I can tell because the lines are very straight. And what he did is he took a guitar string and he took apart a Sony Walkman and he got the engine out of the Sony Walkman, hooked it to the guitar string, dipped it in baby oil that he had burned to get the soot to make the black. Now you could get so many different diseases doing this. And then with his little Walkman, he like tatted himself. Um, the reason I bring this up is when was the last time you were that creative in your marriage? I don't mean getting matching tattoos, but to just say, what kind of creativity am I bringing to that? You could bring, Maria likes like things that are in odd numbers, 1, 3, 5 prime numbers for whatever reason. I would not bring her two cookies. I'd
Mm,
bring three or one or seven. Like that idea of just, it's so silly, but it's for the same reason. She doesn't care if I know how many days that we've been married for, but she cares that it matters to me.
absolutely.
A great way to just demonstrate. If you want to know, like, want to see more sunsets, figure out on your iPhone or whatever you use what time the sun's setting tonight. if it's at 5:13, set an alarm at 5:10 and say, we always watch the sunset together. I'm telling you, that is going to be rocket fuel. Just care. Bring that. You don't need to do the tattoo, but I'm telling you, just know what time the sun sets and you'll see more sunsets and hang out with couples who, like, if you want to see more waterfalls, hang out with people who look for waterfalls.
Very true, Bob. It also makes, so you talk about kind of just observing your spouse well, what is meaningful to him, to her. And it also makes me think about just the notions of our day-to-day rhythms in life where we can practice loving acts. For example, I think about this great example of my parents, and I didn't know this was happening until I left the house, and it was actually my dad that shared this. But for years, as they were raising me and my sister, my mom was usually kind of the first one up, taking care of helping the household wake up in the morning. But she had this habit and routine out of love that she'd go to their bathroom and she would take out her toothbrush and toothpaste. But she didn't just put toothpaste on hers. She would put toothpaste on my dad's. And he said that every morning he'd wake up. He never asked her to do this, but every time he saw his toothbrush with toothpaste, he would think, Brenda loves me. And it was
Oh,
just this sweet rhythm, right? I think
you
about
should.
that as just ways in which we can practice love in meaningful ways day to day. Grand gestures are nice, the trip and the flowers and the candies, but sometimes we've got to really think about most of life is lived in just these mundane, ordinary moments, but yet that's how we can love people well. What do you think about that?
I like it. I'm just, it's 1357. Like, just figure out if prime numbers are the numbers of whatever, then we started, I remember when I started giving Maria some flowers, I'd give her a daisy and there'd only be three petals left. And she's like, at first she's like, wait, what the heck? And then she'd go like, oh, I get it. He loves me. He loves me now. He loves me. So these aren't like mutant daisies. There's like a reason why you do what you do. And you ought to just figure out what that is. And if you're feeling like, oh, go like, well, I'm just not creative. I'm like, no, I want to challenge that a little bit because I didn't. As soon as you want something, you're going to get creative. Because
Mm.
when I wanted to date Maria, I just made sure I got within 6 feet of wherever she was. Like, if you want to get a little closer in your marriage, like this idea of proximity, you don't want to live like together alone, to say, what is something that I could do that we've got a little electric boat and we put around in the bay and it's like we're on tracks at Disneyland and we make this little loop and come back. And it's really eccentric and silly, but it's what we do. I don't know why we do it. Actually, I do know why we do it because we do it together. We just
Mm.
decided this is going to be this thing. So, to your point, it doesn't need to be big and grand. This is even bigger and grander. And it's done like really, you are three daisy petals away from like sending the right message. Yeah. So that creativity to summon your best game. And if you feel like you've kind of lost it, if you lose your keys, you say, where was the last place I saw them? And you return to that place. So if you've lost your joy, if you've lost your romance, again, if faith guides your steps, Romans or Revelations 2, it says, my problem with you is this: you forgot your first love. And so if it feels like that romance has waned, I say, when was the time, where was the place that I felt the most of that? Return to that place and let's go like rebuild that thing. And for some of us, you think it's like a remodel. And for most of the times, I'm a tear down.
Well, that's good. And that's a really good place that I wanted to transition for a second because anytime we're trying to build a love that lasts, we realize that there's ebbs and flows, as we move through life together. And you talked about how do we rekindle that? One of the things I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts about possible obstacles, challenges that maybe can get in the way of us growing our loving relationships?
Yeah, sometimes I assume that God is doing the same thing in your life or the same thing in Sweet Maria's life that he's doing in my life. And the fact is, he isn't. I promise you, there's a farmer praying for rain today, and there is a bride praying for sunshine. And if it rains on her big day, it didn't mean that God doesn't like her. It just means he's doing something different in someone else's life than he's doing in that person's life that's expecting a sunny day. And what I want us to do is to just that you could call it grace or patience, or whatever, but just chill out, like get a puppy. Get two. And sometimes it's taking it down a notch because sometimes they're just in this really intense a vacuum that you created of like all the hurts and all the feelings and all whatever. The idea of just unstring the bow a little bit, take it down a notch or two, and then let's rebuild this thing slowly and playfully. I think that's why God made Dippin' Dots. Like
Mm.
I can't afford them, but they're really good. Like know why you're doing what you're doing and return to some of those places where you're actually curious again. And it sounds too retread to say like date each other again, but to say, I'm going to come up with one creative thing. I can figure out what time the sun sets on Monday. On Tuesday, I'm going to go on a little loop on the boat. On Wednesday, I'm going to, because hope without a plan is a wish. And you want to just hope that your relationship gets better. I want you to come up with a plan to make it better, subject to change.
So good.
You can like you try something and then it just all blows up. You need to come up with a way to just say, okay, don't like dwell there because setbacks aren't campsites. Like they're just setbacks and say, okay, I'm going to do less of that next time.
I love that. And it speaks to this notion of like the choices we make and then the repetition that often kind of follows. And we kind of can become creatures of habit. And sometimes, especially the longer a relationship is, it's easy to maybe take each other for granted or to slip into some patterns that are not as helpful. But I think to your point is kind of like, what's your reference point? What do we need to kind of go back to that was working well? And how do we kind of continue to cultivate moving forward? It reminds me about something I talk about with couples, like at marriage seminars or even sometimes in counseling, is this notion. I like a good metaphor, Bob. So, one that I think about is this notion of like termites. Like sometimes there's these things that can kind of start eating away a little bit that, first glance with termites that are kind of infecting a house, you maybe don't notice it until they've been eating away a long while and some of the bad stuff is starting to kind of happen. And I think part of that is just being more observant and mindful, like, okay, where are we? What's kind of happening here? Is there anything that is kind of starting to eat at us or eat at our relationship or eat at me as an individual that I might need to address? Any thoughts kind of around maybe like some relational termites that
Yeah.
possibly you could kind of be more aware of?
Well, so, if you're listening and you can relate to this idea of just being like high functioning, go for the both, like always charging, next hill, next hill, next hill. I'm very much like amped that way. Like that's like kind of the energy. Like let's do this thing. Um, and yet, it would be kind of like I know you guys in Texas, you're big on football,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like it's not like where you're from, it's who you're for. But whatever team you're rooting for, imagine you're in the end zone and then you're so amped about like next thing, you like call everybody to huddle up and say, let's run another play. Be like, dude, you're in the end zone. Like there's no more points to be had. So sometimes I feel like those of us that are striving in marketplace and in this and that, then you bring that back to your marriage. And I want you to realize you're in the end zone. You got the girl. You're in the end zone. Do your happy dance. Like you're
Yes.
just delight in that. So sometimes people, and it comes from just such a sincere thing, but they need to work on more, like, and call in more plays. And I'm just be like, could you just delight? I think of Song of Songs, not that verse in Song of Songs, but there's another one, and it's chapter 2, and it says, my beloved is mine and I'm his. So just like that's what somebody would say in the end zone in their relationship. Not that you got it all figured out, but that you're in the end zone. You have each other to say, I'm yours, you're mine. Let's do this. We got some stuff that we gotta like our growing edge because we're constantly changing. We're learning how to pick the lock, and then the combination changes as it's supposed to because we're new creations. And so then you pick the lock again. But instead of thinking like, this is such a big, hard marriage. And I get it. There's difficulties and they're really heavy and they're super hard. but you could do the happy dance because you got that person. At one point, you thought that was a catch. Uh,
Yes.
just find your way back to your first love and you lost your keys. Say, where did I find him? Let's go back in there and find people who can help. Don't find me. If you want to feel great about yourself, I'm the guy. Call me up. I will make you feel terrific. But find somebody knowledgeable like Heidi who can actually house like the training. So you can have happy friends like me, and that's great. Have lots of them. Uh, but in addition to that, find knowledgeable people who can like walk through this. They actually are trained to walk people through how to have better marriages.
I love that. Great reminders. And I really appreciate you saying that because, you know, reaching out to other people for help or to kind of help mentor through a season of a difficult relationship, that's not weakness, that's strength. And we all are kind of in this together and finding those resources that buoy us up and encourage us to keep pursuing our love story is important.
And can I
Uh,
just say
Please.
something to, I know it's called therapy, but if you could stop calling it therapy, that would actually be helpful for dudes like me.
Yes.
Because if you
What's your
went,
suggestion? What should it be renamed?
well, if you went to a driving range and you were like a big golfer, and there was somebody that helped you hit it straighter, further, like that's what counseling does. You want to do better in your marriage? You want to like really swing for the fences? A great counselor can help you hit it straighter, further. I'm like, so if you just say, "Hey, honey, there's this person, Heidi can help me," and you hit it straighter, further, and be like, "I'm in."
Great
So
analogy.
yeah, because it sounds like the other one sounds ominous, like you've got some loathsome disease. Like what you've got is humanity. And like you've got
So
like
true, Bob.
you coursing through you. And to say, hey, there's somebody who could help you hit it straighter further, be like, really? Like, yeah. So I just want to do that. A great person who can do some therapeutic counseling will help you hit your marriage straighter, further, more predictably. You know what the other person's going to do. It isn't like just this wild, like hook, like, wow, where did that one come from?
Hey, I'm going to kind of borrow that. I think that is a really good analogy, and it speaks when we think about that, like being able to kind of just hit it straighter and further. That's a really great example. Hey, I know we're getting kind of toward the end of our time together, but one thing I did want to lean into a little bit more for a second is just asking you, related to kind of the life of Jesus and those who are followers of him, what is it in the life of Jesus that potentially we can take from and use within our own relationships to pursue love in a more beautiful way?
The thing that pops in my mind first is just like he was just available. He was just weirdly available to people. Somebody pulled on his shirt. He's like, "Who was that?" Or somebody was at a sycamore tree. He's like, "Lunch on you." He had time for everybody, and sometimes we don't have time. And I find myself when I say I don't have time, what I really lack is empathy. Like, I'm just like onto myself. I say I don't have time for that because I was a pretty busy guy in law school and all that until I met Maria. I had all the time in the world.
Oh,
so, so to be onto yourself. And I think Jesus was like that when he met with people, he was kind of onto them, whether it's a rich young ruler or somebody else with a hand that was withered. And he could have fixed it in his pocket, but he said, reach out your hand to me. And I don't mean the strong one, I mean the one that's got a little bit of a wobble to it. And so maybe a really practical thing that's helpful for me is Jesus did 37 miracles. Just fine. If you want him to do a miracle in your marriage, just so it was first miracle, water into wine, right? So you could try that. You'll at least have some water or wine with dinner.
one or the other, you'll have a
Yeah, yeah,
drink.
one or the other. So what I want you to do is like if faith guides your steps, then take this stuff out of the scripture and say, how do we actually do that? Like when it says like loving our neighbor, like how could we actually do that? I mean across the ocean, but I mean across the street. So as you're taking some of those ideas that are in the scripture, sometimes what we want to do is agree. And agreeing, I don't know how it works. You're the smart person. Our brain says we're doing something. Again, you're not doing something, you're just agreeing. And Jesus isn't interested in you agreeing with him, and he's not interested in you agreeing in your marriage. He's actually interested in, like, so what's the next bold step? Like do that. And you don't have to take all of them. Just I'm saying next lily pad. If I remember when Richard Goff finally took his first step. And I didn't say like I've seen better. Like, no, I'm like, ah. And so go easy on each other with your spouse as you feel like they're really lagging. I'd revisit the premise, but also when they take a step, just say like, wow, that Zachariah
Well
4:10,
done. Yeah.
yeah, deal, way to go. Like I saw his first step and I'm like, wow, boy, genius, 4 years old. Who would guess? So what I would want to do is to say from Zechariah 4:10 that don't despise small beginnings because the Lord delights in watching the work begin in your marriage, in mine. All of heaven is Romans 8 up on tiptoes, just waiting to see what will be revealed. Kind of got a new hope on your marriage. Start viewing your marriage that way, up on tiptoes, just shuffling your feet forward. Say, like, that was a big step.
It's beautiful, Bob. I mean, those words, that energy, that love and enthusiasm around relationships that you're speaking into, I think really does give us something to really work towards and build and to feel encouraged in. That's one thing you do really well is encouraging people around love. And I really do appreciate that. Well, listen, I know we need to wrap here today, but thank you for giving your time, your thoughts, and the ways that you speak into this in so many ways about helping us to pursue a love that is important, intentional, sacrificial, and hopefully will leading us to a love that lasts. Thank
Oh,
you, Bob, for your
I'm
time.
so glad you're doing this podcast. Keep it up, girl. Boy, heaven is up on tiptoes, just waiting to see what marriages are going to be impacted. So go at it.
Amen.